My friends, good day. I'm here today to talk to you about a fear that many people have. This is what we call energy lockdown. Just yesterday, I spoke to someone who told me, well, they're going to forbid us from flying in the coming years. It will be forbidden. We'll be limited to one or two flights per human lifetime. And so there you go. In my life decisions, I take that possibility into account. So, what about it? I'll talk to you about it. I'll tell you what I think about it. I observe this kind of movement very closely from what I sometimes call the climate witnesses. I watch practically every piece of news and I sort and categorize every piece of news, every move they make, and I've been doing this for years. And I would like to give you maybe a method that I use, which I find to be quite a powerful method to know, so that you can know for yourself whether these kinds of things can happen or not, and what probability we can assign to them. By the way, it's with this that I wrote the book Astrology, which is a book that at times, some months, is at the top of its category because it has impacted a lot of people. But the technique that is, in my opinion, the most powerful today is that while we may feel like the world is run by ideologues, in reality, it isn't run by ideologues as long as it's run by financiers. It's the financiers who are behind it. What does that mean? It means that, for example, let's take the Fessenheim nuclear plant, which Germany wanted to shut down. So what we're going to do when we're on Germany's side is we're going to want to reduce consumption. French competitiveness in order to favor its own market and its own German production. So we're a bit bothered to see this country called France, which since the initiatives of Charles de Gaulle, has nuclear power and almost free electricity. So we'd really like this country to sabotage itself. We're not going to send the financiers forward. We're going to send ideologues who will talk, who will protest, who will shout, who will dye their hair blue and all that. And those are the ones who will become vocal. Those are the ones we'll show in the media. And very often that's what the financiers will do because they are cold, icy, calculating, but they will always send true believers out front. They will send you ideologues who believe in what they're doing without realizing they're being manipulated. That's why sometimes when we watch the news, we get the impression that it's the ideologues who are steering the ship. That's not true. The ideologues don't actually move anything at all. It's the high finance behind the scenes that really makes things move. So, how are we going to use finance today to know if this fear of being banned from flying in the coming years is justified or not justified at all? We can never answer that categorically. We have to be clear about that. But we can assign probabilities based on the information available. By the way, Circle Lucide, my support group, will be closing in the coming hours. The website is still up. It will still be there tomorrow, no worries, but the registration form will be taken down tomorrow morning. So there are still a few spots left. We're about to wrap things up. So there are still a few spots for those who want to sign up. It's still available right now. But if you're watching this video a bit later, don't be surprised if there will only be a waitlist form for the coming months at some point. But for now, there are still a few spots left. Let's continue our story. Knowing that the forces of money, the financial powers, the banks, they're the ones who really have the power today. You just have to watch them position themselves. So forget about the people who come on TV to scare you by saying there should be one or two plane tickets per human lifetime. Forget those people. They don't change anything at all, those people. Yes, they are very loud and all, but they are worth nothing at all. It's not their opinion that makes things change. All right. These are people with no power at all. Now, let me tell you what we're going to observe. We're going to look at major airplane manufacturers. We're going to look at, for example, Airbus, and we're going to look at Boeing. And we go to their website and they have an order book. Well, since they're publicly traded companies, their orders aren't secret. They are required to disclose the status or health of their order book. So, when we look at that, what do we see? We see that both companies have order books that are completely full. You know, buying an airplane, an Airbus, or a Boeing isn't an impulse purchase. All right? It's not someone calling like, hello, yes, put me down for, I don't know, 100 on the side. No. It's a very complicated purchase that takes place over years. So, and the delivery, today you have to wait 7, 8 years or more to get delivery of a new plane. Let me remind you that today there are planes, some of them almost new, that are rotting away on airfields. Do you know why? Because they don't have engines. Because when you have the plane, the engine manufacturer, whether it's Pratt and Whitney or General Electric or someone else, also has to supply you with the engines. And they also have their own order books, their own waiting lists, and a waiting list that's even longer than that for the planes. You could end up with a plane and you say, yeah, the good news is your Boeing 737 is ready, but the bad news is, well, it doesn't have any engines. Okay? So the order books are full for many years. Who's going to finance those orders? You can't just call Toulouse today and say, keep 2 A330s for me. And then they say, okay, thanks. No, that's not how it works. It doesn't work like that. You have to show that you have the funds. Where do the finances come from? From a bank? Before banks finance a sector as heavy as aeronautics, a sector like aviation, they will do analyses. And among the analyses done by, I don't know, Societe Generale, HSBC, UBS, or others, is risk analysis. And one of the risks is regulatory risk. Regulatory risk is very important. Now, if ever there was a, let's say, just for the sake of discussion, that there is something in the works at some point, let's say by 2030, in the next 2 or 3 years, let's say, if there was a firm plan to ban us from flying, what would have happened today? Well, we would have already seen that the order books of the major manufacturers are collapsing because, quite simply, the banks don't want to follow. Because the banks say, we're not going to commit to 20-year financing for a service you want to offer when it will soon be banned. You see, that's not going to happen. You'll see it, okay? You'll see positions being taken by the banks, by the manufacturers. You'll see it. You can't miss it. But at this stage, we don't have such signals. The financial signals aren't there. So I've heard, just like you, I've heard people wishing, activists wishing that we would be banned from traveling by plane. Yes, just like they want to ban us from eating dairy products, meat, just like they wish. They want us walled in, living in our cities. 15 minutes that we can't go far, I've heard it all. That's true. They say it, they want it. Are they going to achieve that part of their dream? At this point, I don't have the material evidence to be able to say that it's going to happen. That's it. So that's something I wanted to share with you. I wanted to reassure you about that, if you will. Even if we can never be 100% sure, once again, I'm saying this with all the necessary caution, but I don't have the financial signals that would allow me to validate this fear. So that's the first point. The other point is that there are other countries you can observe, and that's much more dangerous than this threat, which once again isn't real. But there is another much more dangerous threat that we are starting to see. For example, the United Kingdom currently has a Labour government. It's the left that has been there for 23 years. Well, 23 years, 23 months, but it really feels like they've been there for 23 years. In 23 months, they have brought the economy to its knees. Inflation, unemployment, companies leaving, the wealthy leaving the country, everything you see is collapsing. Now, here's my thesis about that, and I think that because if you look at the British establishment, they're obsessed with climate and carbon. It's really an experiment that this country is conducting, and this country wants to set an example. It's just an example that no one will follow. It's more of a cautionary tale than an example to follow, but they claim they'll do whatever it takes for the climate, adopt a sacrificial mindset, and hope the world will imitate their self-sacrifice. No one is going to imitate them. They're just going to shoot themselves in the foot. That's all that's going to happen. No one will imitate them. It's become a climate theocracy. They have total freedom to act, and they say the only thing that interests us is the climate. They've banned offshore drilling in the North Sea, as I mentioned, and driven out energy companies. There's even BP that's thinking about leaving the country. Others have already left or even gone bankrupt because they face taxes, levels of taxation that were over 100%. That means literally a company that makes, I don't know, let's say 1 million in profits, they'll be taxed 1,200,000. That means they'll be asked to pay 1,200,000 in taxes. So companies ended up with taxes higher than their profits, and that was to force them to shut down, to leave. So, what is the technique used in the United Kingdom? Knowing that the United Kingdom has just signed today binding agreements, legally binding agreements, I'll talk to you about that in a minute. From this logic, to reduce by 2040 in the next 13 years, to reduce its carbon emissions by 87%. Can you imagine, just to give you a sense of scale, can you imagine, even at the height of the COVID lockdown, when businesses were shut down, highways were empty, planes were grounded, nobody was moving, nobody was working? Well, that still wasn't enough. We hadn't reached those carbon targets they're dreaming of, just to let you know. So they want to go even lower than that. And just to give you 2 points here, first, the binding agreements they sign. That was invented by Tony Blair. Tony Blair, who was a lawyer for his state, he invented something that you also see in France. That means you have a minister who arrives. This minister, he knows that potentially he's there for 3 months, for 6 months, for a year, whatever. He's there for a limited time. In the past, what happened was that when these people came to power and then messed everything up, they would leave, and there came a time when they lost the election, so they were pushed aside. What will happen? Another team comes in and will dismantle what they did. Today, what they do is sign binding international agreements with terrible exit clauses. That means huge payments or impossible ones or other things to make sure that even if another team comes in, they won't be able to do anything at all. Or limit, that means if you have a team that's hostile to this, they come in. Sorry, I'm getting attacked by a butterfly. So as I was saying, even if another team comes in, they'll have to spend years just dismantling the legal barriers that have been put in place. Because once again, when we bring a new person to power, we're not bringing in a prince with absolute powers. We're bringing in a team that has to act in a democratic context. So if there are laws that have been passed, international treaties that have been signed, you can't just say, well, I'll just cross everything out with a pen. No, there's a process that has to be followed to go back. That process can take years. So that's what they're doing. They're actually creating this kind of lock-in so that even if we vote tomorrow, it won't change anything. So what does the United Kingdom want to do? What's the option? The United Kingdom has taken a vow of poverty. The United Kingdom has taken a vow of poverty regarding these things. So what they've decided to do is simply impoverish the population, because there's only one sure and certain way for the population to reduce its carbon emissions. How are you going to do it? Imagine if you look at it. Every person who has savings, every person who has disposable income that hasn't been eaten up by rent, that hasn't been eaten up by paying, landlords who come to suck our blood from everywhere, every person who still has disposable income at the end of the month or who has savings, well, that money, what is it? It's a suspended issuance. Why? Because that money can be used to consume, obviously. It can be used to buy a plane ticket, pay for a vacation, buy a car, buy a motorcycle, a computer, get a pizza delivered to your home. It doesn't really matter what you do. The money you have in your account is suspended emissions that can, at some point, end up being used and emit carbon. And so what they want exactly is for the population not to be able to do that, not to be able to emit carbon precisely. And what are they going to do? Well, they use the technique of widespread impoverishment. That means they pursue inflationary policies. Due to inflation, people end up with nothing and are devastated. Once people get to the middle of the month and their account is empty, at that point, naturally, they will reduce their spending. You see, they will reduce their carbon emissions. And also, what we do is taxation. So the United Kingdom has become a tax hell, so tax levies. Since there are no public services, that means everything that's provided by public services in other countries becomes a private issue in the United Kingdom. So you have to use your own money for, you give money to the state for taxes, but on top of that, you have to use your personal money to make up for the state's shortcomings. So when you look at all this, you end up with a population that has actually been pushed into poverty. economic poverty, specifically to prevent them from emitting carbon. That's the project, let's say, the British project. It's a project. It's a country that has taken a vow of poverty. Now, be careful. The vow of poverty is not taken by the leaders. It's not taken by the elites, of course. We agree on that. It was made in the name of the people. That means they want to have a poor, controlled population with limited means that won't emit carbon, which is the only sure and certain way to achieve the emission reductions they're planning. There you go, my friends. So you see that we started from a story, from a fear that, in my opinion, in my view, is not justified. In reality, it's just that they're going to come and forbid us from buying plane tickets towards something even more sinister. I'm sorry. Because look, honestly, why did the British use this plan that might spread elsewhere? The United Kingdom has often been a laboratory. You look at things they do and you'll find them in France, sometimes 3 months later. So that's why I watch it closely. Regarde. Look, you can't forbid someone who has money from consuming. You can't tell someone, you have enough money in your account to buy a plane ticket, but I urge you not to consume, not to buy that plane ticket. They're going to do it. Even if he has to leave France by bicycle and go to another country to buy a plane ticket to travel, he will spend. You can't stop him. The only way to stop him is to take away that power. So it's to take away his savings, take away his power, take away his purchasing power. There you go, my friends. We will keep fighting against those people. The first way for me, I think, to fight back is to become aware of what's at stake, but to do that properly, which is very important. Not to have irrational fears that don't exist, not to downplay dangers, but to try to analyze things clearly. I see very often, and that I think can be troubling. That's the impact of COVID, if you will. The COVID era was a trauma for a lot of people, and for me too, actually. You remember, we talked about it. A lot of people here suffered. And actually, we shouldn't use this COVID analysis framework for everything. Every time something happens, we say it's okay, they'll lock us down. Problems will definitely arise in the future. But they'll probably take on another form, another appearance. They'll look different. Don't worry, the people targeting us are inventive. But the good news is that we are inventive too. All right, so there you go, my friends. We will keep on fighting. And I can tell you that you have to have faith. You always have to believe that good will triumph over evil. Evil is very, very cunning. Sometimes it can win small battles, but in the long run, it always ends up being crushed. Thank you, my friends, for watching until now. CircleLessie.com. Registration is open for a few more hours, and I'll see you in the next video. See you very soon.